She disappeared in 1988. No trace. No goodbye. Just gone. Then, 37 years later, a blurry woman appears in the background of a local TV broadcast. Same scar, same eyes. But when questioned, she has no memory of ever being missing. What's buried beneath the old oak tree will unravel everything. Stay with us. This story doesn't just get stranger, it gets darker. And before we begin, drop us a comment. Where are you watching from? The television flickered. Not because it was broken, but because it was old. One of those boxy RCA consoles from the late 80s. It sat like a relic in the corner of a wood-paneled living room, surrounded by dusty VHS tapes, framed photographs frozen in time, and that faint scent of lavender and mothballs clinging to the air. It was Tuesday evening in Helena, Montana. Quiet. The kind of evening where the breeze brushes against the windows like a whisper, and the mountains begin to blur into shadow as the sun sinks behind them. On the screen, a small-town news segment was wrapping up, a high school marching band performing at a county fair a couple of towns over. Just background noise. Clara Jensen hadn't planned to watch anything. She rarely watched TV anymore. Not since Paul died. And definitely not since the world turned digital and unfamiliar. But something about that shimmering, grainy footage, like a memory trying to crawl back, made her stop. In the background of the shot, a crowd claps along the parade route. But standing apart, nearly still, is a woman. She doesn't wave, doesn't cheer, doesn't even face the camera. Just stands there, wearing a beige coat and scarf, hands loosely clasped in front of her. Quiet, removed. She doesn't look strange, just out of place, like she doesn't belong to the moment. And yet, a single comment posted under the re-upload of that news broadcast would change everything. Anyone else think the woman at 142 looks exactly like Claire Markham, the girl who vanished from Boulder in '88? Clara, didn't see the comment that night. In fact, she wouldn't know about it for 5 more days. For now, she simply sat back on the couch, arms wrapped around herself, letting the credits roll. She had no idea that her past, a past she didn't even know she had just shown up in her living room. And someone had recognized her. The case had gone cold decades ago. July 12, 1988. Boulder, Colorado. It was one of those scorching summer days where the heat shimmered off sidewalks. But nobody seemed to mind. Kids pedaled down tree-lined streets. Teens loitered outside 7-Elevens with big gulps. Moms pushed strollers down shaded sidewalks. The air smelled like cut grass and barbecue. Sprinklers hissed behind fences. That afternoon, 6-year-old Claire Markham was playing with sidewalk chalk in front of her house on Maplewood Lane. Her mom, Leanne, was inside folding laundry. Her baby brother, Lucas, napped in the living room. Claire wasn't far, just a few feet from the front steps. Everyone knew her. She had a favorite swing at the park, a glittery red backpack, and a signature doodle she always made, unicorns with giant eyes. She was 6. She didn't just vanish. But somehow she did. Leanne stepped out to check on her, and the chalk was still warm on the sidewalk. Her daughter, however, was gone. No scream, no signs of a struggle, just an open gate, an empty yard, and silence. In the years that followed, the theories came fast, like storm clouds that never cleared. A stranger passing through town, a messy custody dispute, a neighborhood secret. Police searched creeks, basements, backyards, open fields. They found nothing. Not a shoe, not a strand of hair, not a single fingerprint. It was like she had evaporated. Eventually, the house was sold. The Markhams moved away. And Claire Markham became another black and white photo stapled to a telephone pole, her smile curling under rain and time. Back in Helena, Montana, Clara Jensen woke up the next morning to the smell of coffee. Her house sat on the edge of town, a one-story home with pale blue siding, wind chimes on the porch, and a backyard she never used. Her routine was simple: feed the cat, toast some bread, drive to work at Dr. Huss Levine's dental office, smile at patients, sort insurance forms, reorganize drawers that didn't need reorganizing. She was 42, kind, private. She liked cardigans and peppermint tea, kept her phone on silent. People thought of her as the sort who probably preferred being alone, and they weren't wrong. She had no memory of her parents, nothing before 5th grade, no baby photos. Her earliest album started in 1994, each photo labeled neatly by Paul Jensen, the man who raised her. He used to say, "You came to me late, Claire, but you've been the greatest gift I never expected." He never explained what he meant by "came to me late," and she never asked. That night, something strange happened. Claire had this habit, an odd one. She collected old VHS tapes from thrift stores, labeled home videos, forgotten sitcom reruns, birthday parties from places she'd never been. She liked how time got trapped inside them. She stacked them by year on her shelf, out of order, out of context. But to her, they felt like little time machines. Her collection included a 1992 Arkansas wedding, a 1993 Idaho graduation, a 1995 fireworks show in Oregon. Sometimes she'd wonder, am I in the background of someone else's memory? But what she saw that night didn't come from a tape. It came from her inbox. Scrolling before bed, she noticed an unread email in her spam folder. Subject line: "Please read. I think I know who you are." The message itself was short, just a link to a video and one sentence. 142, that's you. I was your neighbor in 1988. Claire stared. Her heart didn't stop, but it tripped, just slightly. She clicked the link. It was the same news broadcast from the fair, the one she'd watched days earlier. But this time, her focus wasn't on the band or the commentary. It was on the blurred woman in the background, the one wearing the beige coat. Herself. She looked at the comment section. One stood out. She had a scar on her left elbow, right? Look closely. Claire rolled up her sleeve. There it was, a pale, curved scar. She always thought she'd gotten it falling off a bike as a kid. But what if she didn't? The next day, she couldn't focus at work. Everything was loud. The buzz of fluorescent lights, the whir of dental tools, the clock ticking above reception. Her name tag, Claire Jensen, looked fake somehow. Too clean, too easy. That night, she pulled out the oldest photo album Paul ever made. The first picture was from a snowy afternoon in 1994, Claire standing beside Paul near a mailbox. She was smiling, holding a thermos. In the bottom corner of the photo, nearly faded, was a small sticker. A unicorn, glittery. She stared. She had never told Paul about those unicorn stickers. A knock at the door startled her. She opened it. A woman stood outside, mid-40s, nervous, holding something in her hand. "Claire?" she asked. "Yes. I'm sorry to just show up. My name is Amy Callahan. I know this is going to sound crazy, but I think I knew you when we were kids." Claire blinked. Amy pulled out a folded photograph, a class photo from 1987. 20 kids in rows, a banner reading Maplewood Elementary. In the front row, a girl with pigtails and a red bow. Claire stared. Same eyes, same smile, same scar. Amy whispered, "You were my best friend. Your name was Claire Markham." She paused. "You disappeared." Claire stepped back, breath catching in her throat. Amy's voice barely made it through. "They told us you were dead." The photo felt heavy in Claire's hands. Not physically, but in the way something can suddenly feel too real. She sat on the couch, eyes locked on the red bow in the photo, the same one that was now resting in Amy's palm. "I kept this," Amy said quietly. You let me borrow it once after a field trip. I never gave it back. Claire, if that even was her real name, couldn't speak. Her mouth opened, then closed. Her brain was scrambling for something solid, a fact, a memory, anything to anchor her to the life she'd known. But there was nothing. Not from before 1994. Not before Paul. Amy reached into her bag and pulled out a second item, a sheet of notebook paper, yellowed with time. It had been folded and refolded so many times the edges had softened. Claire unfolded it slowly. It was a drawing. Crayon. Sloppy, vibrant, childlike. A unicorn with giant eyes. A rainbow in the background. At the bottom, in bright pink marker. To Amy. From Claire M. Claire's hands trembled. I found it in an old box last year, Amy said. I didn't think much of it until that news segment aired. Then I saw you, and I knew. Claire stood up. Her heartbeat felt like thunder in her chest. She walked to the bathroom, flicked on the light, and stared at herself in the mirror. Same face, same features, but now it all looked unfamiliar, like a costume, or a dream she was waking up from. The next morning, she called out of work. Then she called again, and again, until she reached someone in Boulder who remembered. Detective Ron Avery, retired. He sounded surprised to hear from her, more surprised when she said her name, and completely silent when she asked the question, "Is there any chance I could be Claire Markham?" The pause stretched out, and then, "Come to Colorado." The drive took 12 hours. 12 hours of open roads, crackling static radio, old diners, gas stations, and quiet spirals of thought that looped and tangled like smoke. Every highway sign, every roadside attraction, none of it felt familiar. She passed Boulder city limits just after 8 p.m. The sun was beginning to dip behind the Rockies, setting the sky on fire with streaks of orange and pink. Detective Avery met her at a small diner on the edge of town. He was older now, of course. White beard, stooped shoulders, a face weathered by decades of chasing answers that never came. "You look just like her," he said, before even sitting down. Claire didn't know what to say. She stared down at her coffee, hands clenched around the mug. "I spent 15 years with your photo pinned above my desk," Avery said. That smile haunted me, the way it just stopped. He slid a folder across the table. Inside, photographs, case notes, hand-drawn maps, newspaper clippings. At the center of it all, her 6-year-old face. She flipped through the documents slowly. Each one felt like an intrusion, like watching someone else's life collapse in real time. She was wearing a red t-shirt with a heart on it, Avery said, voice low. Plastic jelly sandals. Missing her 2 front teeth. We interviewed over 80 people. Traced dozens of leads. Nothing. No trace. Just gone. Claire looked up. "What about my parents?" Avery hesitated. Leanne and Mitchell Markham. They moved to Arizona 2 years after the disappearance. Divorced. Both passed away before DNA testing became standard. But he pulled out a sealed envelope. "This is a DNA kit. We've kept samples on file from the case. If you're ready, we can know for sure." She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she drove to Maplewood Lane. The street looked almost identical to the one from Avery's old case photos. Maybe a few more cracks in the sidewalks, maybe some newer mailboxes. But the bones of it, the curve of the street, the willow tree at the corner, it all felt like a half-remembered lullaby. She parked outside what used to be her childhood home. It was pale yellow now. A tire swing still hung from the tree. Someone had drawn with sidewalk chalk on the driveway. A unicorn. Claire's breath caught. She didn't get out, just sat there. The porch light flicked on. A man stepped outside, squinting toward her car. She lowered her head and drove away. Back in Helena, things began to unravel quickly. She returned to work, tried to pretend everything was fine. But the world had shifted. The post-it notes she used to love organizing, now they annoyed her. Her peppermint tea tasted dull. Her dreams were strange, full of muffled voices, flashing lights, a hand grabbing her wrist. She began keeping a journal, trying to track what was real, what wasn't. Entry from July 9th. My favorite color has always been blue, but now I wonder, did I just choose that because Paul said it looked good on me? Entry from July 12th. I dreamed of a basement, a cold one, with flower wallpaper, something humming in the background. I don't know if it's a memory or my imagination. Then something happened that shattered whatever illusion of normalcy she had left. The DNA results came back. Positive match. Claire Jensen was Claire Markham, a missing person who'd somehow reappeared, alive, but with no memory of who she was or where she'd been for nearly 7 years of her childhood. The media got wind of it within days. Headlines like, "Missing girl found 37 years later, with no memory of disappearance." The Claire Markham mystery deepens. Where has she been since 1988? Amnesia or abduction? The unanswered questions surrounding Claire M. Journalists knocked on her door. Podcasters emailed daily. True crime YouTubers began dissecting her childhood photos, comparing old clips, theorizing. Some believed she was lying. Some believed she was brainwashed. A few believed something even darker. But Claire, now forced to reconcile 2 lives, couldn't answer the one question that mattered. Where had she been between 1988 and 1994? She couldn't remember. It wasn't until she began combing through Paul's belongings that something shifted. He had passed away 3 years earlier. A heart attack. Quick. Peaceful. Or so she thought. In his garage, buried in a box of tax records, she found a file, labeled Claire. Inside, an envelope with her name scrawled in Paul's handwriting. A letter. "If you're reading this, I'm probably gone, and there's a lot I wish I had the strength to say while I was alive. But the truth is, you weren't dropped off at a hospital, like I told people. You weren't abandoned. I found you." Her hands shook. It was late, September of 1994. I was driving along Route 12, heading back from a camping trip. You were walking barefoot on the side of the road, carrying a stuffed bear, and wearing a red sweater. You wouldn't speak, just stared ahead. I brought you home, called the police, but no reports matched. No missing child alerts. Nothing. I waited a few weeks, then a few months. Then, I couldn't let you go. You were so kind, so sweet. It felt like fate. She read it twice, then 3 times. At the bottom, "I'm sorry, I didn't try harder to find out where you came from. I just couldn't lose you." Claire dropped the letter. Her mind reeled. He hadn't abducted her. He hadn't saved her either. He just found her, walking, alone. No memory. Where had she been before that? Who had she been with? And why had nobody come looking for her in those 6 lost years? Claire couldn't stop thinking about the sweater. Red. Soft. Too big for a 6-year-old. It hadn't been hers, of that, she was sure. Somewhere in the tangled mess of her memory, she remembered itchy tag seams, a faint smell of bleach, and the sense that she wasn't supposed to speak. But who had put her in that sweater? And why? She visited a therapist in Helena, then another. She tried EMDR, hypnotherapy, even regression. Each time, the same frustrating haze. Moments flickered behind her eyes, out-of-focus fragments. A dark room, a flickering TV, a floral patterned blanket, a woman humming off-key, a door she was never allowed to open. But as soon as she got close, the memories slipped away, like trying to hold fog in your hands. Then she got a letter, handwritten, no return address. It read, "I remember you. We were both there. You cried every night. I hope you got out. I didn't. But I remember. I remember." Hey! Claire froze. The envelope had no stamp, No markings, which meant someone had delivered it by hand. She ran to the window. Nothing. Nobody. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she stayed up researching every missing persons case from the late 80s to early 90s in Colorado and Montana. Dozens of names. Too many children who vanished without answers. She narrowed it down to girls close to her age, close to her build. And then, one name jumped out. Annalie Ryder. Disappeared in 1991. Age 5. Last seen outside a laundromat in Butte, Montana. Never found. Her breath caught. A. Ryder. She reached out to Annalie's sister, Naomi, through an old Facebook page set up for tips. It took 3 days to get a reply. A short, cautious message. Can you meet in person? Claire agreed. They met at a quiet park outside Missoula. Naomi was in her early 40s now. Wary eyes. Tense shoulders. A woman who had spent her life holding on to a story no one believed. I've seen your interviews, she said. The way you describe the blank spots. The sweater. The humming. The door. Naomi looked down at her hands. That was her house. Claire blinked. Whose? My grandmother's. Dorothy Ryder. Everyone thought she was a sweet old woman. Baked pies. Quilted. But she was different behind closed doors. Cold. Controlling. Religious to the point of obsession. When Annalie went missing, I knew she had something to do with it. But the police never searched her property. She lived out in the woods. Said she never saw Annalie that day. They believed her. Claire's heart pounded. She died in 1995, Naomi said. The house has been empty ever since. There was a silence. Heavy. Suspended between them like a thread. I need to see it, Claire said. The Ryder house was deep in the forest, tucked at the end of a winding dirt road that hadn't seen tire tracks in years. The windows were boarded. The porch sagged. Vines crept up the side like fingers. Naomi handed Claire a flashlight. We shouldn't be here long. Inside, the air was thick with dust and mold. Peeling wallpaper. Cracked linoleum. The stale scent of forgotten years. The living room had a faded floral couch. A flickering TV sat in the corner, unplugged but still there. A faint imprint of something familiar lingered in the back of Claire's mind. Then she saw it. A red sweater, hanging on a hook by the back door. Her breath hitched. It was the exact sweater from Paul's letter. From the roadside. Naomi stepped forward. That was hers. Annalie's. She always wore it when it was cold. Claire's head swam. If Annalie had worn it, why had she been found in it? They explored further. A creaky door led to the basement. As they stepped down, the temperature dropped. Claire's flashlight flicked across the walls. Floral wallpaper. Faded. Familiar. The humming sound returned in her head. Soft. Uneven. She stopped at a corner. There, etched into the wall, were tally marks. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. Tiny scratches. A child's attempt to mark time. Claire's knees gave out. It wasn't imagination. It wasn't some buried fantasy. She had been here. Locked away. And she hadn't been alone. In the weeks that followed, police began excavating the property. What they found confirmed Naomi's fears and Claire's nightmares. Bones. Small. Fragile. They were eventually identified as Annalie Ryder's remains. She had died in 1993. The media exploded again. Childhood basement reveals grim truth in cold case. Dorothy Ryder's hidden life. Serial abuser. Child killer? Claire Markham's memory unlocks 30-year mystery. It was too much. Claire stopped answering calls. She stopped appearing on talk shows. She stopped opening her door. She had become the symbol of a mystery, one that had outlived its monster. But her questions weren't over. Why had she been spared? Why had she survived? Why had Paul found her wandering with no memory, wearing a dead girl's sweater? And most haunting of all, was Dorothy the only one involved? Then something strange happened. Claire received a second note. Same handwriting. You weren't the only one. I remember 3 of us. I escaped too. I'm still watching. We're not safe. No signature this time. No A. Just the letter E. The idea that there were others, that she wasn't the only child hidden away in that house, or worse, moved somewhere else. It changed everything. The memories that once felt like static now began to pulse with possibility. Claire remembered a song, a strange melody, one Dorothy used to hum at night, like a lullaby wrapped in dread. She found the tune on an old folk song archive, a church hymn from the 1940s, called When the Lamb Lies Down. The lyrics chilled her. Sleep now, child. The hour is near. The shepherd comes. You need not fear. No more dreams. No voice to cry. The lamb lies down. The night is nigh. Claire played it again. And again. She began seeing flashes. A basement door closing. A gloved hand. A stuffed rabbit with a torn ear. A flashlight blinking once. Then again. Claire knew what it meant. Someone else had been there. And someone else was still watching. Claire moved to a cabin in western Montana. She needed space. Quiet. A place where headlights didn't flash across her window at night, and the phone didn't ring with reporters asking if she had more to share. But even out there, surrounded by trees and fog, the silence wasn't peace. It was pressure. Something was waiting in it. She started to paint, mostly abstract things, smeared red and gray and brown across torn canvas. But even in her art, the images came back. The basement, the humming, the stuffed rabbit, and always that sweater. One night, she had a dream. Not a nightmare, not the usual flickering fragments. This one was clear. She was standing in the basement, looking at a little girl, maybe 4 years old, with short black hair and dirt on her cheeks. The girl was shivering. "I don't want to be a lamb," the girl whispered. Claire didn't speak. "You left me?" the girl said. "We were going to leave together." Then the girl began to cry, and her crying turned into humming. That same lullaby, that same voice, but distorted, like it was coming from inside the walls. Claire woke up screaming. That morning, she packed a bag. She drove 4 hours to a storage facility on the edge of Helena, where police had kept boxes of evidence from the Ryder investigation. She knew she wasn't supposed to have access, but a retired detective named Harry Griggs met her there. He'd worked her case in 1993. "I never believed the wandering child story," he told her. "Too neat. Too convenient." Griggs helped her open Box 7B, unidentified clothing and personal effects. Inside, she found the red sweater. It was in a plastic evidence bag, labeled, "Found on subject." No DNA match. But something caught her eye. There was a faint symbol embroidered into the inside of the collar. So faint it almost looked like part of the knit. A circle with 3 slashes through it. She stared. It wasn't decorative. It was a brand. Claire took a photo and ran it through an online database of cult and ritual symbolism. Most results were dead ends, until she found a match in an obscure criminal file from 1987. A Montana-based sect called The Fold. They had no official church, no website, no sermons, just a few scattered reports, mainly from missing persons investigations. Always rural, always involving children. The group believed in something called the Shepherd's Covenant, the basic belief. Children were born impure, but a chosen few, called the Lambs, could be purified through ritual silence and isolation. Most cases were never prosecuted. Witnesses disappeared. Records were sealed. But the symbol was the same. Claire sat in her car for hours. Her whole body buzzed. What if Dorothy hadn't acted alone? What if she'd been part of something larger? What if other houses like hers still existed? She called Naomi, told her everything. There was a long pause. Then Naomi said, "My mom once said Grandma had friends in the pines. People who visited late at night, who never came in through the front door." It was enough. They filed a Freedom of Information request for all documents related to the fold. Weeks passed. Then the package came. Dozens of pages, most redacted, but one case stood out. 1989 Missoula County. 3 missing children. No bodies found. Only clue. A witness report of hearing humming in the woods near an abandoned chapel. The same song Claire remembered. And the most chilling detail? The witness described seeing a girl in a red sweater, walking alone, then vanishing behind a tree. That was 2 years before Claire was found. She went back to the Ryder house one last time. Alone. It was sealed off now, condemned, but she found a broken panel at the back. Slipped inside. The air was heavier this time. Less like decay, more like presence. She descended to the basement. Shined her flashlight across the wall. The tally marks were still there, but something else had been scratched beneath them. Letters. A sentence. Written by a child's unsteady hand. They are not gone. They just changed names. Claire stumbled back. She scanned the room again. This wasn't just memory. This was a message. Outside, the trees seemed to press closer. She thought about Paul. About how he'd found her. About how he'd believed in her when no one else did. And then she thought about A and E. About all the children who hadn't been found. Who had vanished in towns. No one remembered. She thought about the silence that had swallowed their voices. And she decided something. This wasn't over. Claire now runs an underground project called The Lost Names. It's not public. No website. Just encrypted threads. An anonymous phone number. A network of people, former survivors, journalists, even retired law enforcement, quietly collecting stories. They don't look for justice. They look for patterns. The humming, the sweaters, the basements, the symbols, and every so often, someone writes in with a dream, or a song, or a memory of a door they weren't allowed to open. Claire reads every one, because she knows what silence can hide, and she refuses to let it happen again, because the lambs were never lost. They were taken, and some of them are still waiting to be found.